Hello, and welcome to another episode of Discover with Spinetti. Today's episode number 95, and we are talking about why are Asians good at math and how you can be good at almost anything. So that's what we're talking about today. And the reason why we're talking about this is because that seems to be something that a lot of people struggle with, their ability to figure out their ability. And they put a lot of limits towards themselves and they say that, hey, look, I cannot do certain things. And therefore, because I cannot do certain things, I'm limited to the things that I can do in my life. And so their life becomes boring, mundane, very limited. And so today I'm going to prove you wrong if you are in that camp, which is probably 95% of you. And if you are one of those people who has let go of their New Year's resolution, then you definitely fit into that category. So if you are still holding on to that New Year's resolution and you are part of that 9% of people that are still holding on to the New Year's resolution and conquering it as we speak, then you can skip ahead and not watch this. But this is actually quite exciting. So I suggest you watch it either way because you'll probably learn something here and there. So check this out. 10,000 hour rule, okay, by Dr. Erickson. So what he did in 1993 is that he did an experiment, well, or rather not an experiment, he did a study in 1993, and he grabbed three different types of students who play the violin. Hence, we have the image of the violin. And he segregated them in as three different groups. So he segregated them as people that are expert or they're elite or they're the potential star students. So these people are still in their 20s. So they're star students in violin, people that are good performers. They're not elite, they're not superstars, but they're good. And then students who identified as people that they want to be teachers of music in the future. And then he had a bunch of questions to ask each one of those groups. Now, this is the very interesting finding. Now, all of them started at around age 5 playing the violin. From age 5 to age 20, there were various amount of degree of practice. Now, the 10,000 hour, as you can see there, and as you can see how 10,000 hours equates to those elite, is because those people that were in that group actually practiced for 10,000 hours between the age of 5 and age of 20. By the time they were 20 years old, they were considered to be of elite or star status because they have deliberately practiced, and we'll cover what that is, deliberate practice as opposed to just practicing. Deliberate practice for 10,000 hours. Whereas the people there were good performers, and I found this to be quite interesting. So, by the way, this is from Malcolm Gladwell's book called The Outliers. Okay, this is from his book called The Outliers. He wrote a lot of good books. One of the other ones that he wrote that I find absolutely fascinating is called the Tipping Point. But this whole presentation is basically from his book called The Outliers. So, going back on point. So I found it really interesting that the elite practiced for 10,000 hours, yet the people that were good practiced for 8,000. Now, if you were to think to yourself, and you're to say to yourself, okay, well, people who were incredible, like people who people look at and say, oh my goodness, like these people are insanely good, versus people that are, oh yeah, they're good. They're not insanely good, but they're good. Like they're not bad. They're actually good. It's a matter of difference of 2,000 hours. Like it's not a drastic difference. It's not like there was 10,000 and 5,000. It's not like they practiced twice as much. Literally, it's just 2,000 hours more, which is literally 20% more than the elite performers. Just think about that for a second. Think about that. Like if you were to think about the people that are, for instance, in your job or in your field or colleagues or whatever, and you're putting in a lot of effort, but they're putting in just 20% more effort than you, they're going to become the people that others who they look up to and they find them awe-inspiring and they're going to look at you as someone who's they're good. You were good, but you're not a superstar. But that difference is only 20%. I find that to be super fascinating. All right, cool. So now, and the people who identified themselves to be want to teach music in the future practiced 4,000. So I mean, you can see the difference. So they all practiced. They're all, they practiced violinists, but the ones that were elite, 10,000. Now, check this out. What is deliberate practice? Now, the majority of people, when they practice at things, as you can see here. Most people practice by focusing on things that they can do well, right? So, I don't know. Let's say you're practicing certain things. I can't think of anything right now, but you're practicing certain things, and you know that you can do them well, so you practice them over and over again, so you can do them better and better. But yet, and I'm sure you can, if you know anything about me, I'm sure you can kind of guess as to where I'm going with this. But the expert practice are those people that focus on things that they cannot do well or can't even do at all. Like, for instance, if you're doing basketball practice and you're really good at dribbling with your right hand and really good at shooting with your right hand, then you keep practicing at shooting with your right hand and dribbling with your right hand. But if you want to become an expert, then you would dribble and master the dribble with your left hand and shoot with your left hand, even if you can't even fathom you doing it, right? That's called deliberate practice. When you do that, now guess who did that? Yes, you guessed it. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and anyone that is of a superstardom status has conquered the multiple the latitude of differences so that they can become that elite star performer. So let's take it to your job. Let's say you're in sales and you're really not good at sales. And actually, I have a really good story with regards to the Beatles. So stick around. If you're thinking about not watching the rest of the video, stick around because the Beatles are coming up next. And the Beatles, oh my goodness, the story is incredible. Okay, cool. So if you're in sales and you're wondering to yourself, I suck at sales, I'm not good at sales, guess how you can get good at sales? By just trying to sell, right? So you try to sell, you don't sell. And then you try to figure out, okay, what am I missing? And then you do some research, and you try some other things that are new, and you watch other people selling, and you try that, and you keep doing it over and over and over again. And then eventually you'll become a master salesperson. So then what can't you do? Right? I mentioned sales, mentioned basketball. This is a really good exercise for you if you haven't even thought of this. But if you ever caught yourself saying something like, I can't do that, right? If you ever caught yourself saying, I can't do that, or there's no way that I can fill in the blanks, then write those things down. And once you write them down, those are the things that you should be conquering or practicing deliberately on a daily basis. Now, this is really cool. I've talked about this in another podcast that effort actually counts twice, not just once. So your effort, when you put in your effort, it actually counts twice towards your achievement, because whether or not you have quote unquote talent, we'll cover that at the end, what talent actually is. But talent times effort equals a skill. And the skill is, for instance, sales or sports or, whatever it is. But that is the skill. Now, skill times effort is the same effort. Skill times effort equals achievement. That's when people get quote unquote lucky, right? You've heard of all this stuff when people are like, oh, you're just lucky, or this person just got lucky, or they were in a certain era and conditions were, circumstances were such that, because they practiced and they took the opportunity, they got lucky. Well, my friends, let me tell you something. The Beatles, believe it or not, and this is for those people that are watching and actually are into music, they did 1,200 live shows between 1962 to 1964 before they hit it big. For 2 years straight, they did 1,200 live shows. Now, just to give you a comparison, the majority of the bands today, 2024, the majority of them don't perform 1,200 shows in their career. The Beatles did it in 2 years. So when they went to the States in 1964, they were a quote unquote overnight success, but they sucked. As a matter of fact, they were purported to have no discipline, and they sucked so much in the beginning that people didn't even want to watch them. But they kept going over and over again for 2 years, and then they hit it big. But they did 1,200 shows, and the majority of bands don't do 1,200 shows in their careers. So just think about that. Because if you're looking to get a certain status or a certain income or a certain whatever it is, the amount of effort, remember how I said effort counts twice? The amount of effort that you have to put in is so substantially more than the average person, that you basically, it's either you got it or you don't. And that is what is talent. So talent's either you got it or you don't. And then that is then mixed in with effort. And I'll cover what talent is in a second. Okay. Now, this just puts the cherry on top of the cake. Okay. Now, check this out. People who are those superstars, check this out. People who are at the top, people who are superstars, don't just work harder or even much harder than everyone else. They work much, much harder than everyone else. They work so much harder than everyone else that it's almost unrealistic. You know, that's why I don't believe in this whole burnout theory. Because if burnout actually existed, then people wouldn't be able to reach that top level because they'd be burnt out on the way. They'd be putting in way too much effort. But people who are, quote unquote, talented will put in the effort because that's what their concentration and energy is telling them to do. So this here is the slide for you, talent. Because you might think to yourself, you're like, okay, well, what if I put in the effort, but I'm not talented? So I started thinking about that. And I said, all right, what is talent truly? Can you actually look at your DNA and decipher it and be like, I have the gene for music, or I have the gene for business, or I have the gene for leadership, or I have the gene for speaking, or whatever? No, you can't. So you can't actually know what your quote unquote talent is. So talent is literally the energy and the focus that you put towards something. It's the energy and the focus, not the effort, the energy and the focus that you channel towards your effort. So, can you be a talented person in basketball? Of course you can. I mean, look at Muggsy Bogues, 5'7". He made it to the NBA, didn't he? So, is it impossible? It's not impossible. It's definitely possible. Even if you're short, you can make it to the NBA. 5'7". He's shorter than me, and he made it into the NBA. And he had an insane vertical. So that just goes to show. I mean, Muggsy Bogues is one of those examples. There's tons of these examples, you know, of people that have literally gone from nothing to, you know, the top. So I challenge you. I challenge your thinking. And if you're thinking that you don't have the talent, quote unquote, you don't have the talent, and so there's no point for you to put the effort, that's just an excuse that you're putting forth so that you do not put the effort. But if you are tenacious and you will do whatever it takes for you to get the goals and the dreams that you are looking to achieve, then there's nothing that can stand in your way except your own lack of effort. So we covered this. I'm going to say it one more time, that people only get lucky when they're prepared, because as the saying goes, luck favors the prepared. So get prepared in order for you to get lucky, and you will be just as good at math as our friends who are Asians, who are known to be very good in math. And you can be good or even the best at anything. Good luck to you, and good night.